This is A New Angle, a show about cool people doing awesome things in and around Montana. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Well, it's been a remarkable few weeks. We're living through a series of events that are at once shocking, yet unsurprising. There is so much to think and feel and perhaps say about this period of time and its antecedents, but my overwhelming sense right now is one of deep need to lower the temperature. An assassination attempt on a former president and a current nominee from one of our two major political parties represents a tragic failure of civil society. When it comes to navigating disagreement, we really only have two options: conversation or violence. I'm thinking a lot about how we can get better at the former to avoid more of the latter. And over these next several months before the elections, we'll be doing our best to focus on good faith conversations with people interested in solving problems. When it comes to both the assassination attempt and President Biden's withdrawal from the race, these are just sad moments. Take time to sit with that sadness. Seek out and be thankful for sources of useful information, like what you can depend on from Montana Public Radio and Yellowstone Public Radio. Do yourself and your fellow citizens a favor and try to get off the engagement by enragement treadmill. It's not good for you. It's not good for any of us. Think of ways to make politics less interesting and therefore less volatile. It shouldn't be about the team you're on and whether that team is winning or losing. It should be about solving problems and advancing our shared interest. One space for a new angle to dip into the news cycle and topics like these is our monthly Incentives and Instincts series with Bryce Ward. Next week's episode with Bryce focuses on both the rise of political violence, but also the increase in bipartisan collaboration on certain topics in Congress. It was recorded prior to the assassination attempt, yet the topic has a new sort of resonance in the wake of that horrific event. We've also started bringing listener questions into those conversations as well. So please hit us up with your questions. You can submit a question over at our website, anewanglepodcast.com. I'm also doing some regular writing over there at anewanglepodcast.com, where I try to make sense of these and other forces in a broader context. We cover a wide range of topics and are always happy to get suggestions and questions. So if you find what we're up to useful, please consider a subscription. Okay, so on to today's episode. It's part 2 of my conversation with Heidi Wallace and Rajiem Seabrook of Empower Montana, an organization dedicated to creating a more just and inclusive world through leadership development and education. Heidi serves as executive director, and Rajiem is director of equity and impact.
The inspiration, honestly, for me is our young people. You know, they are so fierce and aware and, you know, they see the inequities, they see where things need to change, and they feel that they can contribute to change.
I love this conversation for many reasons, but I'll highlight just 2 here. First, Empower Montana has been at this work for a long time, 25 years. They know the difference between saying the right things and doing the actual work. Second, it was a chance to hear 2 committed progressives grapple with whether or not our society is actually making progress. Thanks again to these 2 leaders for a great conversation. We'll pick it up with Heidi Wallace and Rajiem Seabrook right now.
Yeah, every group we work with is inspiring and, you know, positive. We had a longer, in the past working with the Missoula Police Department, and that work, they created an equity team that was committed to just continuing these conversations internally. We love when those things happen.
Yeah, we're doing that right now with the American Red Cross for
Okay.
all of Montana, Idaho, and Eastern Oregon.
Super.
I always liken the Red Cross to police, fire department, EMTs. By the time you see them, it's either you've done something to someone or something's happened to you.
Yeah, you're in some sort of crisis.
Some sort of crisis. And, you know, places like the American Red Cross wanting to be in communities outside of emergency or disaster
Yeah.
services, and us helping them understand that you can't just come into communities and just say, hi, we're the Red Cross, show up and like us. There's ways to integrate yourselves that makes you more part of the community, and it's not just an entity serving something, or like Heidi said, here's a construct, fit our box. No, we're going to teach you how to morph your box to the needs of the people.
Yeah.
So when you go to Missoula, you're going to deal with people in Missoula differently than you're going to deal with people up the road in Mission. And understanding that not one construct fits every type of person. And understanding that people in different environments have different needs based upon their cultural lenses. And notice I didn't say racial, your cultural lenses, which sometimes race happens to be a part of.
Sure.
So understanding that, and then again, helping them form their own way in which they want to go about things, and not just box checking. It's because when you're talking about humans, you don't just box check and you're not a human anymore, right? You got to keep going on because you're going to evolve. You're ever growing. You're abstract and ambiguous to a certain degree. So are the needs of the people. So making sure that the work mirrors that. It's not just check boxing. It's transmorphic. It's going to flow with you. It's going to be long term. It's not 2 days. It's the next 220 days.
You've described in this conversation a lot of creating opportunities for individuals to create self-oriented insights and insights about others, for organizations to sort of guide themselves. That's a very sort of bottom-up process. How do you all think about policy, whether it's state government policy, federal agencies? You're shaking your heads a little bit, maybe because your work is done from a different perspective. But like, does your work give you hope that some of our governing institutions might figure out how to move forward on some of these thorny issues?
Well, I know it does. We talk about the individual reflection, but then we click out to the macro, like the systemic oppression that exists in our society. And, how do we interrupt that? And we say it takes building authentic relationships across group lines, and it takes transforming institutions, and that's rules, laws, policies, practices, norms. We can't change policy without changing hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And, that's our role. And our role is also ensuring that those people, whether they're young people or adults, where there's laws and policies being enacted that impact them, that they have a direct way to voice their experiences and their needs. We take our youth, we have an amazing youth advisory council. Every other year, we take them to Helena for Equality Day. They meet with legislators. They lead a session, a community session about strengthening allyship for LGBTQ youth. They get to testify if they want to. But we also look at organizations and schools and community groups and say, what are your policies and norms? Let's dive through them. Let's review them. Where can there be changes? It could be the smallest thing of adding, not having binary gender on an application. It could be the smallest thing as saying not dear parents, dear family and guardians. Subtle things are changing policy, practices, and norms. And there's some real oppressive policies that are coming at us, and our young people are being severely impacted by them. And we need to ensure they can share their stories, because their stories are going to change hearts and minds.
I want to press on a term you used a few moments ago, a system of oppression. Right? Because I would assume, I don't know how many of our listeners, but there is a swath of the population that would hear a term like that and say, what are you talking about? That doesn't exist. It's 2024. What's a system of oppression?
We cannot deny that there are oppressive systems in our country. It was built with a white dominant mindset, and that's where we are today, whether we knew it or not. And I think those are some of the aha moments that I've appreciated, is introducing how misinformation and disinformation can lead to mistreatment, and that can then become embedded in our rules, laws, policies, and practices. I mean, we can look back a couple hundred years and see it. To be able to examine, like, how was this built? What's perpetuating inequities. That's what I like to introduce to people. It's not, there's no shame, blame, or guilt. That's going to hold us back. We need reality checks. We need to be able to think beyond ourselves. And our systems aren't set up for the dominant people to question it.
Right. So how do you get the people to question it? I mean,
gently, but by,
Sure. I guess what I'm asking, like, you had a powerful example a moment ago where you said, like, hey, just understanding that you shouldn't just have parent on a release form. It should say parent guardian, because not everybody has a parent. And then you realize, like, there are people that don't have parents. And what does it feel like if you don't have a parent to have to write that on a form, or if you're not a parent to have to? So that's exclusionary. And
bingo, right there. There's the question. I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Engel, but
please do.
Bingo. Not everyone has a parent. What's that like? What's it like being in a group home? What's a foster kid? Wow, that grandparent's 80 years old and is taking care of a 6-year-old. As soon as you start asking those questions, guess what you're not doing? You're not damning someone.
Yeah.
You're not presuming things. You're asking, like, what's that like? Hey, Mr. Engel, what was it, and hypothetical for the people listening, what was it like growing up with a single grandfather as a parent when everyone else is, mom or dad or whoever was around? And those are the types of questions that then lead into other curious aspects as opposed to speculative manners.
Yeah.
And that's the magic, because you learn by what? Asking questions. You don't learn by saying that stinks, close the door and move away. You learn because you ask those questions that lead to another question, that leads to another question, that then paints a different picture as opposed to what you thought or what you were taught by something that wasn't the healthiest source.
Yeah.
I also like what Heidi said. We never want to change your mind, Mr. Engel, because if I say, hey, what do you think about a certain situation? You could be like, I think this, and then it's over. I can compartmentalize my thoughts. But going back to that whole thing of how do you feel about it? If I change your heart, by proxy, your mind will change. I don't want to change your mind, because you can change your mind right back the minute. But if I change your heart, you're going to sit with that for a second because you're feeling it.
Yeah.
And I think in the things that we do and how we go about it, we want you to feel, because that changes how you think. Sometimes how you think about things doesn't change how you feel. But once you feel something, it transforms how you think. And then once you start thinking differently, your behaviors become differently.
Exactly. Yeah.
And as a human, your behaviors then become cyclical. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, they sure do. A theme of this show lately has been the importance of trying to avoid zero-sum framing, to try to stay in non-zero-sum dynamics, positive-sum dynamics to the degree that that's possible. How do you avoid falling into zero-sum traps when you're talking about this kind of work? By creating more opportunity and opportunities for inclusivity for others, how are you not framing it as this is taking away from others?
Well, I think that we react to words without really breaking the words down.
Okay.
How does inclusive mean excluding someone else? Like, let's begin at the beginning. I want to include older people. I want to have it be more inclusive for people who live in rural situations. I want to have it be more inclusive for people under 6 feet of height. How does that exclude anyone? It doesn't. I think we need to get back to, like, actually listening to the words instead of reacting to the words. Right? Listen to what I'm saying instead of reacting to what I'm saying. We live in a reactive society. We don't live in a responsive society. It's initial, it's visceral, it's guttural, it's listen to what I'm saying, because if you listen, then it changes how you hear me. It changes how you go from that point. And I think that to avoid that zero sum is get back to doing what we're doing right now. Let's have a conversation without the confrontation. Imagine that. Can we have a conversation without the confrontation? And also, in the last 6 to 8 years, your opinion means you're trying to erase my opinion.
Yeah.
You're trying to no, you just have a different way of going about it. But if we break it down, we might actually have the same end game. I'm just going to go left and you're going to go right to get there. And that's okay, because we'll end up at the finish line together. My wanting to sit at the table doesn't mean you have to leave.
Yep.
If you want to leave, that's your choice. That's not me forcing you.
You work a lot with youth. And youth in particular live in a media ecosystem that is so algorithmically driven that it sort of reinforces a lot of the division that we have in our worldview, in our background, in our society. We're sliced into groups, and our media environment tries to keep us in those groups so that we stay engaged. Have you come up against that phenomena of how we interact with media and how media operates in your current work?
Yeah, I had a conversation with a group of mothers about 3 weeks ago around this, and I don't understand why my kids. I said, first of all, who buys the devices? Who has control over them? I said, like before you blame YouTube and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter /X on these things, how often are you having conversations with your kids around these subjects? The room fell silent. Well, we don't. If you're not doing that, then you can't blame those outside forces. You are mom, dad, grandma, group home advisor, whoever. Like, you're the first and last line of defense against that kind of stuff. To be able to say, hey, can you unpack what you just read? Can you unpack what you just, to have those kids start thinking critically? But also take back some of the control over the, $3,000 devices we're literally pacifying our kids with. Like, hey, before we get into this, let's preface and then have the epilogue. Right? Let's, just like a good book, let's have the preface, then let's have the epilogue.
Yeah, I mean, I'll push back for the sake of argument and
Proceed.
Say that you could view the technology moment we're living through as a system of oppression.
Absolutely.
And to argue that it's up to an individual to overcome that might be too big a lift for an individual.
As much work as I've done in this community, actually just this week I got on Twitter for another reason, just because I wanted to listen to an interview. I've survived without social media.
Good for you.
Right? And
amazing that a person can survive without social media.
I know.
We'll be back to my conversation with Heidi Wallace and Rajiem Seabrook after this short break. A New Angle is proudly presented by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. This show does not happen without these pillars of our community, and I'm so grateful for their support and encouragement. And speaking of support, have you checked out our new website yet? anewanglepodcast.com. There you can support our show directly with a variety of subscription options. Subscribers get access to bonus episodes, additional segments, writings, and other benefits. So check it out at anewanglepodcast.com.
Hi, I'm Nora Sachs. I'm the host and reporter of Richest Hill, a podcast from Montana Public Radio, and you're listening to A New Angle.
Welcome back to A New Angle. I'm speaking with Heidi Wallace and Rajiem Seabrook of Empower Montana.
We as people have given up our power for things. How can we do this? How are we going to do this? Who's going to do this? You are. You are. Go look at the person in the mirror. Reflection is eternal. It's a revolution starts with one person, right? Change starts with one thought. So yeah, put the onus back on the people and stop putting it on something or someone else. It is quick. It is easy. So and convenient to me. It's Mr. Angle's fault that I'm not feeling good. It's something else that's not allowing me. It's TikTok that's sucking my brain in. Turn it off.
I do think, though, it does impact our young people in unhealthy ways. And, providing opportunities to educate young people about how to actually dive deeper into the information you're getting, to be critical about what they're taking in, but also to be amplifying their skills for cultivating their own resilience, to be cultivating their own positive well-being, and being in spaces where they are feeling connected, feeling seen. That is going to be a positive sort of reinforcer against some of the negative things that might be coming at them through media. And, they're bombarded by information 24/7. Like I always say to the young people, 7th grade Heidi would not have survived with cell phones.
Oh, yeah, I would.
No way.
I'd probably still be grounded. At 50 years of age, I'd still be grounded.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I think giving young people options beyond the screens to feel whole, to feel connected.
So are we getting better as a society? Are we improving? Are our sensibilities around these issues we're talking about today improving?
I think we're doing different with hopes of doing better. I say that in our sessions a lot. Like, I don't ever want to say, hey, Justin, I need you to do something better, because that indicates you've messed up. Mr. Engel, can we do something differently? That gives us hope. Can we do something differently? Think about all the times, and I'm assuming your dad said, go clean your room, and then he comes in to check your room. Hey, I need you to do a better job. What? I gave it my all. I just gave up my whole Saturday. Hey, Mr. Engel, can we do a different job? Can we do it differently together?
Sure.
So I think our society right now is almost in a purgatory. Like, we want to do better, but we have to figure out how to do things differently first. And that goes back to listening to people. That goes to including people. That goes to not trying to erase people or get rid of things that actually shine light. It goes back to, I don't know, we need to get back to town halls and meeting in the park. Because if I meet you in the park, guess what? We're not on a screen.
Yeah.
Right?
I think there's been movement, positive things to be celebrating, enough that can keep that hope alive.
Yeah.
And we also have to be clear about the reality that, there are attitudes and policies and energy that is, disrupting the health and well-being of our young people and adults. Mm-hmm. And we have to be committed to ensuring that our young people can survive and thrive, So yeah, there's enough hope to keep us going, but I think there is reality that, we might be in an ebb of our flow.
Interesting.
Right now.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I should have asked the question this way. Like, are we making progress to a more just society? Like, is our society more just than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 200 years ago?
In some ways.
Yes, in some ways, definitely.
Yes and no.
But in some ways, no, because we're still dealing with the same isms.
Okay.
We're still dealing with the same isms.
Yeah.
There are parts of if we turn the news on right now and took the color off our screens, it's 1952 again. It's 1968 again. I also liken this, and I say this in our engagements, I was born in 1974. Some of the last civil rights bills were signed 6 years before I was born.
Yeah.
So like, when I really think about that, my generation is the first generation to actually bet, not my parents, not our respective parents, us. And we're half century. Well, I don't know how you old, but Heidi and I are on the other side of the mountain right now. And part of that is we haven't made a lot of progress if we're still talking about the same things, if we're still protesting the same things, if we're still fighting to try to find equality in the same areas, in the same sectors, in the same states, in the same cities. So some of it has made minute progress. But we're still fighting the same isms. We're still fighting ableisms. We're still fighting sexisms. We're still fighting classisms. We're still fighting racisms. We're still fighting homophobia, or dealing with the things from within. So progress has been made, but there's so much more progress that needs to be made and is wanting to be made.
Heidi, looks like you're
Yeah.
holding on to a thought there.
No, I think we got to hold on to the positives.
Yes.
That is the hope that gets me going every day. And we also have to be real about the challenges and what we're up against. Mm-hmm. And when you say what's different from 10 years ago, I can say one example is I could go into any school in this state and work with young people and make sure they don't feel invisible and that they could identify as who they are, and that we could, be in front of educators and talking to them about how to be, stronger allies to meet all their young people, no matter their identity or circumstance. That's not happening today. So, that's why, like, my heart, I'm getting hot right now. It's just like thinking about it.
I would say, going back to the technology thing, that has actually advanced some of this. Because now that everyone is their own, everyone has 2 turntables and a microphone.
Sure.
They're recording things for the realities. So like some of the technology is actually giving credence to the needs of the people. So when things are recorded, when things are picked up on and it's shown on that scale, it's like, that actually did happen. And then the reality, the truths, you can't debate that. So the flip side to going back to your screen, Mr. Engel, is like some of those things are actually lifting. It's amplifying things. It's giving people a chance to be heard, where back in the day you would have to wait for the news reporter to come in with hope that they would cover the story accurately.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of filters in between.
Oh, boy.
Right.
Amazing editors out there.
Mm-hmm.
The inspiration, honestly, for me is our young people. They are so fierce and aware, and they see the inequities, they see where things need to change, and they feel that they can contribute to change.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep following their lead and doing my best to kind of clear the pathways.
Well, let's give folks an on-ramp to the work that you do. So if you're a young person wanting to get involved in one of your youth programs, if you're a leader of an organization who wants to bring you all in to help make the organization better, how would you advise people to find you and get involved?
Well, definitely come by our website, www.empowermt.org. And I know we're on Instagram and Facebook, and we have an Empowering Youth Leadership coming up this summer, July 22nd through 24th, for high school students, where they get to build connections across group lines, get some leadership skills. And
it's for free.
It is free, and it's at Sealy Lake. So, come be in nature with us, and you can find information about that on our website. But, or just, look at your local coffee shop. You might see one of us there, but we would love to talk more about how, we can be a resource to your school or business or organization
or community.
Or get your young person connected to some of our programs.
Mm-hmm.
Super. Well, thank you so much to the two of you for coming in here, talking about the work you do, but more importantly, for the work that you do. I appreciate it. Montana appreciates it. And you are moving us towards a more just world. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting us have a platform today.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for listening to A New Angle. If you like what we do and want to support us directly, please consider a subscription at anewanglepodcast.com. A New Angle is recorded at Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. Our presenting sponsors are First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Kelly Larson is our producer. Maddie Jordan is our production assistant. VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music, and Jeff Meese is our master of all things sound. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.